losing the game, and you don't even know you're playing. Life didn't give you rules or warnings. It just threw you into an invisible board where every wrong move costs more than time. It costs identity. And worst of all, you're so focused on looking strong, on proving something to others, that you forgot the essential. Who are you in this game? You're not the pawn, not the queen, not the spectator. You are the king. And the king who forgets himself is already in check. But you're living like a background character in your own story. You run without direction, react instead of deciding, make noise thinking that's power. It's not. The king doesn't panic. He observes, he calculates, and when he moves, the entire game adjusts. And you? Do you give yourself away just for a crumb of validation? Do you fight other people's battles just because you're afraid of seeming weak? Do you try to control the outside world when you can't even govern your own thoughts? Listen closely. You're not losing because you lack strength. You're losing because you don't know what you're defending. If you don't know what's essential, everything feels urgent. If you don't recognize your own worth, any outside opinion can shake you. That's the crack. You thought the game was about winning. It's not. The game is about protecting what's real, preserving what's non-negotiable, guarding what cannot be corrupted. So stop, look at yourself, and answer with brutal honesty. What are you defending? If your answer is my image, my status, my role, then you've already lost. Because the king who protects the crown before protecting the head that holds it lives under constant threat of collapse. This is air. This is fire. But what truly matters can't be seen. Your mind, your emotional balance, your values, your purpose, that is your real strength. That's what can't be allowed to collapse. Because when that breaks, nothing external can save you. And yet, you ignore it. You cover it with empty goals and digital praise, as if success were applause, not inner silence, as if being admired meant being at peace. But the truth is different. The world can applaud you while you're falling apart inside. What good is a strong queen if the king is on the edge of collapse? You've played this game as if you were immortal, as if nothing hurt, as if moving without pause were a sign of power. But it's not. The king doesn't run. The king calculates. The king holds back. He doesn't win by attacking. He wins by knowing when to move and when to stand still. Because the king who moves without thinking dies. Do you get it now? Every time you lie to yourself just to fit in, you're moving your king into invisible check. Every time you prioritize what others think over what you feel, you leave your soul unprotected. Every time you pretend instead of feeling, you lose a kind of peace that's not easy to get back. And you still wonder why you can't find rest. It's simple. You didn't build an inner castle. You built walls on the outside, but inside, everything is in ruins. You became obsessed with external strategy and forgot the most obvious truth. The real game is played within. You don't need to move everyone else. You need to know what you're willing to lose and what you'll never allow yourself to let go of. And this is where brutal self-knowledge enters. Only the one who knows himself can draw a strategy that doesn't destroy him. Only the one who knows himself can tell the difference between what's essential and what's just noise. Because those who don't know their own value end up giving everything away for nothing. And the worst part? Most of them do it with a smile. How much longer will you keep betraying your principles just to belong? How much longer will you disguise your anxiety as ambition? How much longer will you keep calling that noise inside you success when it doesn't even let you sleep? This isn't about winning. It's about not losing yourself in the process. It's about holding your heart steady, even when everything around you is falling apart. Because if you lose the king, the game is over. There's a raw truth no one dares to tell you. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one in front of you. It's the one you've let into your mind. That silent saboteur that doesn't shout. It whispers. That doesn't reveal itself. It hides in your thoughts. It doesn't push. It convinces. It keeps repeating that you're not ready, that you'll fail, that it's better to stay in the safe zone, even if that zone is slowly suffocating you. And you listen to it. Because it sounds familiar. Because you've spent years repeating that voice as if it were your own. But it's not your voice. It's the echo of your unattended wounds, of your unprocessed fears, of beliefs forced onto you that you never dared to question. Here's the point. If you're the one hearing that voice, then you can change the script. Real leadership doesn't begin when you lead others. It begins when you lead your own mind. When you can observe chaos without becoming part of it. When you can hear fear without obeying it. When you decide to move with clarity, even in the middle of the storm. Chaos doesn't go away. It never will. What changes is your ability to walk through it without getting lost. And that can only be built from within. The world applauds those who win, but it quietly admires those who survive without betraying themselves. Because success without peace is nothing more than an empty scream, loud applause that weighs more than it's worth. So the real question is this: do you want to win? Or do you want to endure without losing yourself? This isn't about being invincible. It's about knowing yourself so deeply that your weaknesses no longer shame you. You reinforce them with wisdom, not with pride, not with masks, with principles, with purpose, with boundaries, because when you know what you're defending, you don't sell yourself for the first bit of validation. The more you know yourself, the less you need to prove anything. The more solid your center becomes, the less external noise can move you. And the more you protect your inner king, the less you fear the battle. True power makes no noise. It's the kind of calm that unsettles, that steady gaze that says, "I know who I am," without having to say a single word. Now tell me, when was the last time you sat with yourself and asked, with brutal honesty, what is it that I truly want to protect? Those who move on impulse always lose, because the real game isn't won by the one who moves fastest. It's won by the one who knows, with absolute clarity, what they will never give away. And you? Do you already know what you'll never let go of? Because if you don't, every offer will seem tempting. Every voice will sound wise. Every defeat will feel final. And none of them are. Failure doesn't define you. What defines you is what you choose to protect when everything around you feels like it's falling apart. Protect your mental health, your inner peace, your integrity, your purpose. That's not selfishness. It's strategy. It's maturity. That's real leadership. The king who survives isn't the fastest or the most visible. He's the most conscious. The one who won't trade the essential for the urgent. The one who doesn't give up his calm for applause. The one who doesn't need recognition to know he's valuable. And here comes a brutal truth. If you don't protect your king, no one will do it for you. You are the center. And if you fall, it doesn't matter how many pieces are left on the board. The game is over. That simple. That real. So start today. Not with grand gestures, not with empty promises. Start with one step, just one. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask, with brutal honesty, what am I denying that I should be defending with everything I have? Because when you know what matters, you stop moving from inertia and start moving with intention. And in that moment, even with a single step, you've already won more than thousands who run without knowing where they're going. The real victory is not beating the world. It's not losing yourself. And do you know the most common mistake of those who lose without realizing it? They believe that protecting the essential means closing off, that guarding their inner kingdom is about building walls, that self-knowledge is a shield, when in fact, it's a sword. Let me tell you something few people truly understand. Knowing yourself doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. Because when you know who you are, what you won't negotiate, and what you'll never allow, you become untouchable in a world that survives by manipulating those without roots. Look around. Look deeply. Most people live in reaction. They act from fear, from lack, from the urgency of not losing. And what does that create? It makes them easy to control. Touch their ego, and they collapse. Deny them approval, and they walk away. Give them validation, and they sell themselves. But there's a kind of person who doesn't play by those rules anymore. The person who did the inner work, who went into the depth of their shadow and came back in peace. That person, you can't dominate. You can't buy them with applause. You can't scare them with rejection, because they don't need to belong, because they already belong to themselves. And right here begins the next truth I need you to understand. The brutal difference between someone who seeks power and someone who seeks clarity. The first is a slave to his hunger. The second is free in his purpose. You see it, right? Everyone wants power. Financial power, social power, power over others. But real power isn't found out there. It's not something you accumulate. It's not something you inherit. Real power is born within. And the wildest part? It doesn't make noise. Real power is silent. It doesn't need attention. It doesn't demand to be seen. It's the power to look yourself in the mirror and say, "This is who I am. This is my worth, and this is non-negotiable." It's not about shouting how strong you are. It's about living with such coherence that your presence speaks before you ever say a word. And what fuels that internal power? Just one thing: clarity. A clarity you can't buy, you can't fake. It doesn't come from likes or applause. It comes from the process. From walking through chaos without losing yourself. From holding your essence when everything else seems to fall apart. Because clarity isn't knowing what you want when things are good. It's holding on to it when everything is breaking. It's staring the storm in the face and saying, "This doesn't move me." It's watching the world run, while you stay still. Not because you're slow, but because you know exactly where you're going. And that, my friend, makes people uncomfortable. Because in a world full of doubt, someone who walks with direction is a threat. A living reminder that it is possible, that you can live with purpose if you're brave enough to stop living for others. But no one tells you that. Because if you knew, you'd stop being easy to manipulate. You'd stop buying what you don't need. You'd stop working jobs you hate. You'd stop clinging to relationships that drain you. That's why this society rewards obedience and punishes awareness. Because the obedient are pawns. The aware are kings. And this is where we return to the board. A king without clarity is just a disguised pawn. He thinks he's leading, but he's just reacting. He panics when a rook falls. He crumbles when a queen is lost, because his center isn't within. It's in everything outside him. But the king who has clarity can sit alone at the board, surrounded by silence and threats, and still move with intention. And pay attention here. Clarity isn't arrogance. It's not thinking you know everything. It's having the humility to admit what you don't know. and the intelligence not to act from that place. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to move, and when to stop to protect what cannot be lost. Knowing yourself isn't just about your strengths. It's also seeing your limits, your dark corners, your obsessions, your wounds. Because if you don't see them, someone else will, and they'll use them against you. If you don't know where it hurts, anyone can press there. But if you do, if you face it, if you work on it, they lose control. You stop reacting, you start deciding, and that is the new level of the game, the level of those who choose. Because in this life there are two kinds of people, those who react and those who decide, those who play with the pieces they were given, and those who choose to create their own moves. Only those two win, not the others, they themselves. Here comes an uncomfortable truth. If you don't decide your life, someone else will, not always with bad intentions, but simply because there was empty space. And empty space always gets filled. If you don't fill your life with purpose, the world will fill it with noise, consumption, comparisons, and expectations. And without realizing it, you'll end up living a life that sounds good, but isn't yours. And what's the point of winning a game if you didn't write the rules? That's not victory. It's slavery disguised as success, glory that tastes like defeat. The worst part? You won't notice it until it's too late. Until one day, you wake up, look in the mirror, and have no idea who you are or why you do what you do. That moment, that instant, is the real checkmate. Because no move can save you if you've lost contact with what matters most. And that's where balance comes in, another forgotten pillar of inner leadership. Because knowing yourself isn't enough. You have to take care of yourself. And I'm not talking about spas or rest days. I'm talking about protecting your center, nourishing your mind, feeding your values, filtering every word you let in. Because your mind is fertile ground, and whatever you plant there will grow. So tell me, are you planting clarity or watering noise? Because if you spend your days consuming emotional garbage, comparing yourself to filtered lives, listening to voices that inject fear and urgency, what do you expect to grow inside you? Peace? Impossible? Purpose? Even less? And that's how everything begins to burn. First on the inside, where no one sees. Then on the outside, when you can no longer hold up the act. Until one day the board still looks intact from the outside, but you already know you've lost within. And that is the saddest defeat, because what's outside can be rebuilt. But when the king falls on the inside, everything else is just decoration. So I'll say it again. Protect your center, your mind, your balance, your purpose. Not because you're weak, but because you are essential. Because if you fall, everything you've built loses meaning. And if you're still doubting all of this, ask yourself one last question. How many of your decisions were born from fear? And how many from clarity? That answer says it all. That's where you'll know whether you're playing or just moving. And if you've made it this far, if you listened to every word without distraction, it's because something inside you has already woken up. A voice that says, "This is for me." It's not coincidence. It's your consciousness knocking at the door. Because you're standing at that precise moment, that crossroads where you either stay asleep or decide to take back control of the board. But wait, don't leave just yet. Because what's most powerful comes next. Have you ever felt like you were moving forward but with no direction? Like each achievement filled you less? Like every victory was just another layer over the emptiness? You're not broken. You're disconnected. Because when you don't know what you're defending, Nothing makes sense anymore. And that doesn't destroy you all at once. It wears you down. It drains you slowly. It kills your soul with a meaningless routine. And the most ironic part? You already have everything you need to change it. You already know. You already feel it. You're just scared to make it real, because you know that once you act, there's no going back. And you're right, there isn't. Because once you live with clarity, you can't settle for less, and that terrifies you, because you know you've crossed a line. But that's also what finally sets you free. Truly free. A leader of yourself. Not the kind who leads with shouting or seeks approval, but the one who stays loyal to who he is. The one who looks within and says, "This is who I am, and I will never betray myself again." So here comes the final question, the one you can't dodge. Are you going to keep moving on autopilot, or are you finally going to play for real? Because this isn't cheap motivation. There's no epic music, no applause. There's a mirror. There's discomfort. It's you, face to face with yourself. It's about stopping the cycle of survival and starting to live with intention. About learning to say no to what looks good but takes you further from yourself. About walking with purpose, even when everyone else is lost. And if you understood that, the game has already changed. Because now you no longer play to be liked. You no longer move pieces out of fear. You no longer sacrifice your king for a pawn called validation. You play with purpose, with vision, with structure. And that makes you invincible from within. Invincible. So don't tell me you can't, or that it's too late, or that it's too hard. What you're missing isn't time. It's a decision. Decide. Today. Even if it's with one small gesture, one silent choice, a no spoken without explanation. Because when you protect your center, you protect everything. And before you go, I want to ask you for one thing. Head to the comments and write, "My king doesn't retreat." That will be your code, your way of saying, "I got the message. I'm ready to play for real." And if even one part of this video hit you, if even one sentence made you close your eyes and whisper, "That was it," then subscribe, but not to be just another number. Subscribe because you didn't come here to be entertained. You came here to wake up. And listen closely. This doesn't end here. Because from this moment on, every step you take will carry a different weight. Because you no longer move by inertia, you move by choice. And that sets you apart from the herd. So write it down, claim it, and get ready, because what's coming is not a game. It's life, played by someone who finally remembered who the real king is. See you in the next video. Or maybe we'll meet only in the silence, between one move and the next.